Welcome to the second part of our discussion in regards to types of transactions. In the first part, we discussed the asset purchase. Now we'll talk a little bit about the share purchase as a type of transaction. Generally, the share purchases provides a little bit more fluid type of transition for a business sale. That being said, one of the main things that sellers do know from the very beginning is that this type of transaction provides for a once-in-a-lifetime capital gains exemption for qualified corporations registered in Canada. Now, before such a decision is made on the seller's side, it is important that a conversation is held with an accountant and a lawyer to actually make sure that the corporation under consideration actually falls within the guidelines and the rules of that, and it's eligible for this type of capital gains exemption. From a buyer's point of view, there are a number of things that need to be considered in a share transaction. One of the main things is obviously that the transferability of liabilities is actually a lot more prominent. There's no clear ending between the corporation's life prior to the seller selling the company and the buyer buying it. That means that the buyer inherits a turnkey operation, doesn't need to do a whole lot of things to continue the operations going forward, but with that comes the inherent risk of, so to speak, skeletons in the closet, liabilities, any kind of anything that was incurred prior to the business sale. Besides the exposure of liability to the buyer, they are, in terms of mitigating actually those risks, there are a number of steps that the buyer can take. One of them is obviously doing an extensive due diligence on the company and making sure that as much as possible everything is uncovered prior to the point of sale. Because even with indemnities from the seller, there's still a significant exposure to the buyer. So that due diligence in terms of creditors to the business, in terms of tax liability, in terms of any other outstanding issues prior to the sale is very important to be uncovered prior to the sale. With an experienced legal representative, accountant, and certainly assistance of a broker pointing in the right direction, all these things could be uncovered and the risks still mitigated. From the seller's point of view, and that's one thing that I notice a lot of sellers are not very well aware of, is that with a share deal on the exact opposite side of what was just discussed from a buyer's point of view, in a share deal, the seller potentially could be exposed to liabilities for any action of the buyer post-transaction, because as discussed, the corporation's life continues and there's really no hard stop in terms of where the responsibilities of the seller and where the responsibility of the buyer start, even though there was a share purchase transaction and the shares changed hands at a certain point of time. So that is another thing that sellers need to consider and not look blindly at the opportunity to make a higher amount upfront with lower tax exposure, but also consider what are the downsides and the risk of that. In conclusion, we'll just talk very briefly. The comparison between the asset sale and the share sale are very multifaceted. There's never a clear situation where we can only do an asset or only do a share deal, and it really depends on the particular situation of the seller and the buyer, as well as the terms and conditions of the deal that make one more preferable than the other. Come in with an open mind to the table, discuss this with your advisors, and as necessary, we at Beacon would be more than happy to point you to what are the questions to ask and need to answer in order to be able to make a decision one way or another. Thank you very much, and we look forward to working with you.